Hello and welcome everyone to the daily news analysis of 23rd of September 2023। तो आज के इम्पोर्टेंट आर्टिकल जितने सारे हैं हिंदू न्यूज़पेपर से पहले वन बाय वन देख लेते हैं। स्पोर्ट्स मिनिस्टर विल स्कीप द एशियाड इनॉग्रल एज चाइना बार्स एंट्री ऑफ अरुणाचल प्लेयर्स। स्पोर्ट्स मिनिस्ट्री बैन कर दिया है, इस बार स्पोर्ट्स मिनिस्टर बैन किए हुए हैं एशियाड इनॉग्रल में जाने के लिए। Then Canada's soft power approach could embolden Khalistan radicals, experts. OBC list Supreme Court notice to Center and Kerala for willful disobedience. People count India and the great power contest in the West Asia. A clear message to industry on dispute resolution in unique gesture. Supreme Court allows lawyers to use interpreters. Strong government with full majority led to passage of Women's Reservation Bill, according to Modi. Supreme Court declines to consider plea for independent audit of source code of EVM system. Visa suspension for Canadian enforced at Indian mission globally. Then Quad Minister hold talks on rules-based order United Nations reform. Then no signal from Vikram and Pragyan Space Agency. Then oil price a concern but no alarm yet. JP Morgan's decision to lower government's borrowing cost free of liquidity CEA. The sports minister will skip Asiad inaugural at China as China bars entry of Arunachal players. Union Sports Minister Anurag Thakur on Friday cancelled his visit to the Asian Games due to China denial of entry to Indian Wushu player from Arunachal Pradesh. Even as the government registered an official protest at the decision, the three players Nieman, Wangsu, Unliu Unilu, Tega and Mekung Lambu were refused entry despite having e-accreditations from the organizers, while Mrs. Wangsu could not board the flight from Delhi at all. The other two were told they could only travel till Hong Kong with no further development and their event scheduled for Sunday. It seems unlikely they will be able to participate. Government officials in New Delhi said they were surprised by China's treatment of the three sports persons from Arunachal Pradesh who had valid accreditations games to begin today despite ongoing tensions between India and China. At the line of actual control, Mr. Thakur, who also hold the portfolio of information and broadcasting and youth affairs, was scheduled to travel to Hangzhou for the inauguration of the Asian Games by Chinese President Xi Jinping on Saturday. It was only after the Ministry of External Affairs learnt on Friday that the players were stopped from boarding their flight from Delhi late on Thursday night, that the decision was taken to cancel the ministerial visit and to lodge protests with Beijing. The ground staff of the airline's Hong Kong-based Cathay Pacific eventually allowed two of the Arunachal residents to board their flight to Hong Kong, but they were then prevented from going on to Hangzhou. Officials said they believed that all three had received their accreditation cards in what was possible an oversight by Chinese sporting official, and therefore instructions were given by the Chinese authorities to stop them from broadening at the last minute. According to the protocol for the Asian Games, all sportspersons were given accreditation cards which served as visas for entry into China and not visas on their passport. An official told the Hindu that it could not have been a coincidence that the three cards which served as visas for entry into China and not visas on their passports. An official told the Hindu that it could not have been a coincidence that the three sportsmen targeted were all from Arunachal Pradesh. The government of India has learned that the Chinese authorities have in a targeted and premeditated manner discriminated against some of the Indian spokesperson from Arunachal Pradesh, said MEA spokesperson Arindam Bagchi, in line with our long-standing and consistent position. India firmly rejects differential treatment of Indian citizens on the basis of domicile or ethnicity, he said. A strong protest has been lodged in New Delhi and Beijing against China's deliberate and selective obstruction of some of our spokespersons. Further, as a mark of our protest against the Chinese action, Minister of Information and Broadcasting and Youth Affairs and Sports of India has cancelled his scheduled visit to China for the Games. Mr. Bakshi said, ironically, the decision came on the day that the Indian flag was hoisted and the Indian contingent was officially welcomed into the athletes' village. Earlier in the day, the Olympic Council of Asia in the Games organizing committee made a statement on Asian Games being an inclusive event for all sports lovers of Asia, but refused to comment on the contentious issue of the athletes from Arunachal Pradesh. The issue was brought to our notice yesterday, and we are taking it up with the organizing committee to try and find a solution quickly. We will inform you accordingly. Acting Director General of OCA Vinod Kumar Tiwari said, we are meeting as a working group also and taking it up with the government. Apart from the government to government interaction, it is under the discussion by OCS also. Acting OCA President Randhir Singh added, but the host appeared to be in no mood to budge, and Wei Ji Hung, honorary live vice president of OCA Executive Board and chairman of the Ethics Committee, claimed that China had issued the visa, but the Indians had not accepted it, reacting to India's decision to cancel the ministerial visit. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs doubled down, saying that its government has never recognized the so-called Arunachal. The next, Canada's soft approach could embolden Khalistani radicals, experts. With Canada being seen as going off soft on Khalistani extremists amid strained relations with India, the pro-Khalistani radicals in Punjab and outside the country could get forced even as the movement find little support in state. Here the demand keeps resurfacing through a minuscule selection of Sikh diaspora. Observers of the state's politics and law and order situation fear that if Canada allows anti-India activities in the name of freedom of expression, it could embolden the radical elements, which is dangerous for Punjab that shares an international border with a hostile nation, Pakistan. While the Khalistan movement, marked by a turbulent phase of militancy in the mid-1980s, has lost popular support in Punjab, security experts have been pointing out for sometimes that there are some people abroad and elsewhere in the India who have an interest in keeping the em- members of the long dead movement alive. Over the past 2 years, there has been a rise in the spate of Khalistan-linked incidents in Punjab and neighboring Himachal Pradesh following the recent development set up by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's allegation of an India hand behind the killing of the June of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a pro-Khalistani leader based in that country. Punjab-based radical outfit Dal Khalsa and Sikh youth of Punjab were quick to hit out at the Indian government while saying that the Khalistan movement was alive even today in India. They appreciated Mr. Trudeau and sought a reply from Prime Minister Narendra Modi on accusation. Fears confirmed. Shiromani Akali Dal Amritsar posted on X, formerly Twitter, what Simranjit Singh Mann, the party's MP from Sangur, refuted and raised in Indian Parliament, has finally been confirmed today by Canadian PM Justin Trudeau. According to Punjab's former Director General of Police, Sahi Kant, the National Investigation Agency has sent several requests to Canada for the extradition and deportation of terrorist operatives and pro-Khalistan elements wanted for their alleged involvement in cases of terrorism and other related offences, but these requests have been pending for years. Does it not show the Canadian government is trying to side with pro-Khalistan elements or other such elements? It could be for vote bank politics or any other reasons, but eventually it gives a clear impression of safe retreat in that country, and it is a dangerous trend. He said the Khalistan movement has lost popular support in Punjab, but yet it has some pockets of support among a few sections of Sikh diaspora in Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and the US. These people have money power which can be used against India to foment trouble through their sleeper cells in Punjab and possibly other part of the country. He further said drug money, weapons and explosives are being pushed from across the Indo-Pakistan border with the use of drones. There must be some recipient for this. The concern against this backdrop can be ignored and brushed aside. Surinder Singh, an assistant professor of political science at Punjab University Rural Center at Kauni in Muktsar Sahib district, said that given the larger number of people from Punjab settled in Canada, a cautious approach to deal with the interest of both countries is needed. OBC list Supreme Court notice to Center and Kerala for willful disobedience. The Supreme Court on Friday issued a notice on a contempt petition filed against the centre and the Kerala government for the willfully disobeying judicial order to periodically revise the backward classes list in the state and to ensure equitable distribution of the benefit of reservation in the public employment. A bench headed by Justice B.R. Gavai sought a response from the centre, the state government through the chief secretary and Kerala State Commission for Backward Classes. The contempt petition was filed by an NGO, Minority Indians Planning and Vigilance Commission Trust, represented by Advocate Harish Biran. The petition said the Kerala High Court had on September 8, 2020 directed the centre to take necessary steps for finalization of socio-economic study report taking into account parameters for the identification of socially and educationally backward classes within Kerala and submit it to the state backward classes commissions. Based on the report, the commission and the centre were directed to complete the evaluation and submit recommendation to the state within a period of 6 months. On June 28, 2021, the Supreme Court had extended the time for completing the exercise by a year. The petition said the contemptor had deliberately sought to override judicial order and refused to conduct any census and submit the report to the commission. The inaction had led to backward classes, including the Muslim community, to remain in the lower strata of society. Equitable distribution. The contempt plea pointed out that the Indira Savani's judgment of the Supreme Court in 1992 had called for classification among backward classes and equitable distribution of benefits of reservation. This had meant a periodic revision of list to exclude those who had ceased to be backward. The petition said the lapse in conducting the study and timely revision in the backward classes list was violative of Article 16, Clause 4 of the Constitution. Then next, the people count. The census is too important to be delayed for political reasons. Census collects populations data that is crucial to planning and development, and the exercise is rarely devoid of political intent and consequences. India has conducted the census every 10 years since 1881, but in 2020, the decennial exercise for the 2021 census had to be postponed due to COVID-19 pandemic restriction related to the pandemic has ceased and the state machinery is ready to start the exercise anytime. But the BJP government at the center continues to withhold political clearance on September 20. Home Minister Amit Shah told the Lok Sabha that the census will take place after the Lok Sabha after the Lok Sabha 2024 general election that still avoids any clear mention of the date or year, allowing speculation about the government's intent. A possible reason why the center is eager to delay it until 2024 is a clamor for enumeration of a caste and question that the BJP is trying to evade a census after 2026 will become the basis of the next delimitations of Lok Sabha seats, which will involve interstate redistributions of representation. The BJP may have initiatives to wait until then. In the last few years, changes in the Citizenship Act and conflict between some states and center regarding the National Population Register have further muddied the discussion on the census. The proposed 33% reservation for women in the parliament and assemblies is linked to the next census delimitation, which adds an additional imports. The next one will also be the first digital census, giving citizens an opportunity to self-enumerate. During self-enumeration, Aadhaar or mobile number will be mandatorily collected. Around 30 lakh government officials, including school teachers, will be assigned as enumerators, and each will be assigned the responsibility to collect details of about 650 to 800 people through both online and offline modes, covering an estimated population of more than 140 crores. In normal course, completion of both the phases of the census takes at least 11 months. Meanwhile, the quality and mechanism of population level data collection and are evolving fast thanks to technology. The Registration of Birth and Deaths Amendment Act 2023 that will come into effect on October 1 will help a centralized population register, electoral register, Aadhaar and ration card, passport and driving license database. The centrally stored data will be updated real time without human interface, leading to addition and deletion from electoral rolls when an individual turns 18 and after death, respectively. Rather than trying to weaponize a categorization and counting of people, the government must take states and parties into confidence on all the issue around the census. India and the great power contest in West Asia. कट गया है शायद. India and West and the great power contest. At the G20 summit in New Delhi earlier this month, United States President Joe Biden and others unveiled a US-backed infrastructure project to connect India, West Asia, and Europe with shipping lanes, rail networks, pipelines, and data cables. A week earlier, the high-level US delegations had visited Saudi Arabia, chasing a normalization agreement between the Sunni Kingdom and the Jewish state of Israel, two of America's allies in the region. These seemingly unrelated but geopolitically contentious development offers a broad framework of Mr. Biden's approach toward West Asia, a geostrategically important region where the US had been domineering presence for decades, but which is now being challenged by multiple factors. Two-party policy. Mr. Biden's West Asia strategy has two parts. One is the continuation of the Trump-era policy of bringing America's two pillars in the region, the Gulf, Arab and Israel, closer to meet their common geopolitical challenge, such as Iran's rise. The Abraham Accord reached under Mr. Trump's totally set the stage for the transformation of Israel's ties with the United Arab Emirates, but the true potential of this policy would not be reached unless there is a deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia, arguably the most influential Arab country today. Mr. Biden, who as a candidate had vowed to make Saudi Arabia that they are, has become a long way as president in reaching out to the kingdom. The administration believes that the Saudi Israel deal would transform Arab-Israel ties, strengthening the U.S. position in the region without further military commitment. The second part of Mr. Biden's approach is to reassure America's friends and allies that the U.S. is not extending West Asia. In 2012, the leaders of India, Israel, the U.S. and the UAE at a virtual summit of what is now called the I2U2 multilateral. The idea behind I2U2 is to create a new platform that could expedite the economic integration between West Asia and South Africa and offer economic and technological solutions to the problems faced by the global South. India's presence in a grouping of Abraham Accords countries was seen as a legitimate recognition of India's presence in the region. The India Middle East Europe corridor announced at the G20 summit referred to it in the past paragraph announces New Delhi's standing it seeks to build an economic corridor from India's western coast through the Gulf, the UAE and the Saudi Arabia, Jordan and Israel to the Mediterranean, bringing India and Europe closer. If this project takes off, the US hopes that it could retain its channel of influence in the West Asia, control the major shipping lines, and reassure its allies of its staying capacity. The US may not want to exit West Asia, but it has deprioritized the region in terms of its security commitment, and as its focus has shifted back to Eastern Europe and East Asia, but the US deprioritization of the region does not diminish the strategy value of potential of West Asia as the US is pivoting to East Asia. China, which is dependent on imports for over 70% of its oil requirement, is enhancing its focus on West Asia. China has not only emerged as the biggest trading partner of America's Gulf Arab allies and a major investor in the region, but has also shown a willingness to play a bigger role as a peacemaker, which was evident in the Iran-Saudi reconciliation agreement. This poses a dilemma to the US deprioritization of the region is a strategic reality of Washington as it is now facing far bigger conventional challenges in Russia and China, but it cannot just exit West Asia because China would try to fill the vacuum. America's answer to this challenge is to forge closer ties between its allies in the region and strengthen U.S. security architecture and bring India in as a bigger stable partner to write the new rules of economic engagement and integration. Competing with China. India seems willing to take this bet new West Asia, but it is to be seen how far the Biden plan would help the US retain or extend its influence in the region at a time when China is trying to do the same thing. Primarily, the Biden plan is dependent on a potential Saudi-Israel deal, but let us say such a deal is not possible. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said in an interview recently that both sides are getting closer to each other every day. Even if a deal is materialized in the near future. There are other challenges. The US deprioritization of the region has loosened its grip on its allies and left a security vacuum which have collective prompted regional powers to autonomize their foreign policies and take steps toward a more predictable engagement with both friends and foes. This was evident in Saudi Arabia, UAE detent with Iran, the decision to end the Saudi-led blockade of Qatar and the Arab reconciliation with Syria's Bashar al-Assad. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are also trying to formulate policies independent of US goals and strengthening ties with rising powers. Their decision to join the BRICS grouping Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa is a case in point. So they might welcome America's diplomatic push or economic integration plan, but they may not remain client state states like they were during the Cold War and the unipolar world anymore. Second, the Biden administration, despite its limited engagement, continues to see Iran as a hostile power, as the also the rivalry between Iran and Israel would remain the central geopolitical contradictions of West Asia by reaching a determinate with Iran. Gulf Arab has made it clear that they would not like to get stuck in the Iran-Israel rivalry, which has potential to spill over into a conflict. Such an outcome would destabilize the region again, derailing America's plan to stay as a benevolent great power. Multiple avenues for India. For India, the US-China competition in West Asia opens new avenues of engagement. The US sees India with its size and the size of its economy and the legacy of its historical engagement and cultural connect with the region as an important partner in its bid to continue to shape West Asia's geopolitics. India should be welcome to the movement but should not look at it through the prism of another Cold War, or it should not put all its eggs in one basket as it did in Afghanistan. It is already part of the near functional international north-south transport corridor that connects India to Russia through Iran and Central Asia. The Middle East corridor would open another economic channel. India's overall policy towards the region should stay anchored in this idea of multilateral multi-engagement, not in appeasing or containing any great power with or without the US, and irrespective of China's presence in the region. India should strive to play a major geopolitical role in West Asia. It extended neighborhood without upsetting its traditional balance. A clear message to industry on dispute resolution. Any conversation about the Indian litigation system eventually leads toward the team alternative dispute resolution. ADR refers to a bucket of mechanism that enables disputing parties to resolve their differences amicably without the intervention of courts. Given the delay in Indian court proceedings and the increasing cost of litigation, the significance of ADR in India cannot be understood. Until recently, these discussions largely focused on arbitrations or conciliations of dispute under the Arbitration of or and Conciliation Act 1996. But mediation of disputes is finally getting its due. In the recent monsoon session of Parliament, both houses passed the Mediation Bill 2023, and upon receiving the assent of President of India is referred to as the Mediation Act 2023. And upon receiving the assent of President of India is referred to as the Mediation Act 2023. The Indian legal framework already encourages court to refer the disputing parties to ADR procedures, including mediation, if there were elements of settlement which the parties may accept. The Act will take in this encouragement a step forward. Irrespective of a prior mediation agreement, it will obligate each party to take steps to settle their dispute through pre-litigation mediation before approaching an Indian court. To facilitate this process, the Act will also require a courts and relevant institutions to maintain a panel of mediators. Many benefits people. The potential benefits are several. The requirement is expected to reduce the filing of frivolous claims before Indian. The potential benefits are several. The requirement is expected to reduce the filing of frivolous claims before Indian courts owing to the confidentiality of a mediation. It may also mitigate the risk of deteriorations of parties sorry, relationship due to a publicly fought dispute. Yet at the same time, concerns are raised about the feasibility of a mediation conducted under the code of an obligations, and as opposed to a sincere desire to arrive at an amicable resolution. In the latter scenario, This may empower a showed an obligation as opposed to a sincere desire to arrive at an amicable resolution in the latter scenario. This may empower a recalcitrant defendant to delay a genuine claim. Fortunately, the Act will provide some safeguard against these concerns. On the one hand, it will require the mediation to ordinarily be conducted by an impaneled mediator who must always be neutral and have uncompromising expertise is subject to an extension by the parties. They must also compete, complete the mediation within 180 days from the parties' first appearance. Sorry. On the other hand, the Act will not remove the refugee of Indian courts entirely. A party may, in exceptional circumstances, seek urgent interim relief from a court before the commencement of during the continuation of a mediation. These provisions prioritize expertise and efficiency while ensuring that the obligations of a pre-litigation mediation is not weaponized. The aim is to create a balanced framework which encourages the parties of the focus more on their commercial dealings and less on their disputes. The aspects of mediation and arbitration in this discussion, however, one aspect has gone unnoticed. The Act will effectively effectively position mediation similar to commercial arbitrations, and in India the similarities between their respective supporting pieces of legislation are obvious. Both pieces of legislation impose stringent timelines for conducting of proceedings, mandate confidentiality obligation Indian courts to refer the parties to mediation or arbitrations, provide a default mechanism for the appointment of a mediator or arbitrator and prescribed the procedure for the terminations of their mandate. Likewise, both ensure the enforceability of a mediated settlement agreement and an arbitral award, respectively. The establishment of a Mediation Council of India equally mirrors the proposal in 2019 to establish an arbitration council of India that is yet to be implemented. Mediation and commercial arbitration that are thus made allies, albeit at a different stage of the same journey. Parliament's message to Indian industry is clear. In commercial matter, courts must no longer be the default venue for dispute resolution. Parties are expected to resolve their dispute amicably through mediation and alternatively through commercial arbitration. While the doors of Indian courts are open if required, this access must be perceived as a matter of last resort. To this extent, the Act will foster camaraderie between the mediation and arbitration of a commercial dispute and reduce the burden of Indian courts service providers. In this context, a final key parallel emerges similar to how the recent amendments to the A&C Act prioritize institutional arbitration of the disputes. The Act also places emphasis on institutional mediation in India. It envisages mediation services providers to provide not only the services of a mediator but also all the facilities, secretarial assistance, and infrastructure for the efficient conduct of mediation. A mediation service provider is synonymous with arbitration institution. India is already home to experienced arbitration institutions, some of which provide mediation services that are on a par with global best practices. These institutions are therefore expected to play a meaningful role in India's mediation journey. Only then would India become a global hub not only for arbitration but also for all aspects of commercial dispute resolutions. Then next we have in unique gesture. In unique gesture, Supreme Court allows lawyer to use interpreters. Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud agreed to a unique request for a lawyer on Friday during oral mentoring. However, Advocate Sanchita N came up front to ask the Chief Justice for his permission to allow an interpreter for the benefit of her hearing impaired colleague, Advocate Sarah Soni, who was appearing online. Mrs. Soni was appeared in item number 37 in this court list, which dealt with a petition filed by the Javed Abidi Foundation seeking equal participation and implementation of rights of disabled population. Chief Justice Chandrachud agreed readily to the lawyer's request. The court immediately opened a separate online window for the interpreter Saurabh Rai Chaudhary, who was seen using sign language to communicate the court proceedings. He did not wait for the item number 37 to begin, but began interpreting every case that the court had heard. After a few cases, Solicitor General Tushar Mehta commended the interpreter to the Chief Justice. The speed with his with which the interpreter is doing his job is amazing. He was interpreting every word of my lord. Mr. Mehta told the Chief Justice. Yes, I did notice, though he is only for item number 37. He is following every case, the Chief Justice replied. Strong government with full majority led to passage of Women Reservation Bill. Modi. A day after Constitution 128th Amendment Bill to reserve 33% seat in Lok Sabha and the state assemblies for women was cleared by both houses of parliament. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the bill presaged a new democratic commitment in India made possible because of a strong decisive government with a full majority at center. He was addressing a felicitation ceremony organized by the BJP's Mahila Morcha, which was attended by BJP President JP Nadda as well. During his speech, Mr. Modi also made a speech for having a strong government with a majority, stating that it was one of the main reasons for the bill to get pushed through so many years after it was first tabled. Having reservation for women in Lok Sabha and state assemblies was talked about for nearly 3 decades, he said, adding that the earlier efforts lacked commitment and women were even insulted, asserting that his government was to empower women who have emerged as a power over past decades. Mr. Modi said that was the reason why political parties that used to tear copies of the Women's Reservation Bill in Parliament had to support it. Mr. Modi termed it the good fortune of the BJP and the government headed by the party that it got the opportunity to pass the bill. The bill, he said, was a proof of fulfilling Modi's guarantee of ushering in women-led development. The next day, Supreme Court declines to consider plea for independent audit of source code of EVM system. Supreme Court on Friday declined to entertain a writ petition seeking an independent audit of source code governing the entire economic voting machine EVM system. Appearing before a bench led by Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud, Advocate Sunil Aiha, who was petitioner in person, said the source code was the brain of an electronic machine. An independent audit public body which can view such a human readable set of written instructions source code would ensure confidence that these processes would run exactly as intended and exclude the possibility of a concealed Trojan code beyond the prescribed software requirements. The specifications the petitioner argued. IEEE 1028 standard. Mr. Aya submitted that the independent audit should be undertaken by applying the IEEE 1028 standard. This is a well estimated standard for software review and audits fixed by the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, the world's largest technical professionals organization. Since the EVM system has been adopted as a method of exercise the democratic franchise, it is of central concern for all the citizens that its integrity is beyond any slightest shadow of doubt, lest it affect the democratic rights of the citizen and be a cause of concern for the national security. The petition said he said a technical audit by the manufacturer of the EVM system was not transparent enough. The Supreme Court, however, said the Election Commission of India was constitutionally entrusted with the superintendency and control of the polls. The petitioner has not provided any material to show that the Election Commission was in breach of its constitutional mandate. The bench said it was not inclined to pass any direction on the petition which concerned a policy issue. Ultimately, the manner in which the source code ought to be audited and whether the audit should be placed in the public domain bears on sensitive issues pertaining to the integrity of the election process which are conducted under the superintendence of election commission, the court said. Visa suspension Visa suspension for Canadian enforced at Indian missions globally. Even physical applications for Indian visas from Canadian citizens to Indian missions in third countries will not be processed under the suspension of Indian visas for Canadian that the government of India is enforcing this week. A source clarified the Hindu that the suspension of Indian visas for Canadian has a worldwide scope as Indians missions outside Canada will also not accept working paper visa application from Canadian as part of the process of suspension. The persons with knowledge of Indian visa process said that this is mainly because Indian visa application like other visa application will require Canadians to deposit a visa fees with Indian missions in third countries. We would not like to receive visa fees if we do not plan to process the visa application, said the source. The Ministry of External Affairs announced on Thursday that normal functioning of Indian High Commission in Ottawa and other Indian missions has been affected because of security threats. That apart the spokesperson of the NEA said e-visas for Canadians were also within the ambit of the suspension, but the latest clarification has broadened the scope of the ban as no Canadian will be entertained in any of the Indian missions spread across the world for an Indian visa. This also indicates that through the suspension is being implemented because of apparent security threats. It also has bureaucratic and political undercurrents leading to a worldwide implementation through Indian missions. This suspension does not cover those Canadians who had OCI cards and not valid Indian visas. The visa crisis is a fallout of a controversy triggered by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Trudeau's Monday statement before the House of Commons in which he accused Indian operatives for being behind the June murder of Khalistan Tiger Force chief Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Surrey, British Columbia. Subsequently, Canadian missions in India have decided to temporarily adjust staff presence in India, indicating they were cutting down the diplomatic and non-diplomatic staff employed in India. Quad ministers hold talks on rule-based order United Nations reforms. Meetings early on Friday morning along the fringes of the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly UNGA. Foreign Minister of the Quad, India, Australia, Japan and US reaffirmed the group's commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific region where disputes are settled in accordance with international law. The Quad also committed itself to the principle of United Nations Charter and reforms of the institution. A new initiative to help countries respond to terror attacks was also discussed on Friday. As per a joint readout of the meetings, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and his counterparts discussed the outcomes of the Quad counter-terrorism working group's consequence management exercise, which studied how the Quads could help regional countries that had experienced terror attacks. The working group is next scheduled to meet in Hawaii in December, where it will conduct a tabletop exercise, the ministers stressed their commitment to countering terrorism, including terror financing and cross-border movement of terrorists and curbing the use of emerging technology for terror purposes on Ukraine. The squad read out struck a similar note to the recent G20 joint statement from New Delhi. It expressed deep concern calling for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine without naming Russia as a aggressor. We express our deep concern over the war raging in Ukraine and mourn its terrible and tragic humanitarian consequences. The statement said, adding, we underscore the need for comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in Ukraine in accordance with the international law, consistent with the principle of the United Nations Charter. The Quad also backed the United Nations efforts to restart the Black Sea grain initiatives, a deal that secures the export of grain from Ukraine and Russia. The agreement had expired in July, with countries calling for its resumption, including at the G20 in New Delhi. The joint statement also calls for the comprehensive United Nations reforms in including expanding permanent and non-permanent representation on United Nations Security Council. We underscored the need to address attempts to subvert the international system, including in the United Nations, and promote accountability. The statement said, presumably referring to Russia's use of veto on the Security Council in actions related to the conflict in Ukraine on North Korea. The statement condemned Pyongyang's disabling missile launch and the pursuit of nuclear weapons on Myanmar. The Quad supported a transition to an inclusive federal democracy and the ASEAN 5-point consequences an April 2021 agreement between the Myanmar junta and ASEAN group of countries. The group reiterated its commitment to practical initiatives in Indo-Pacific regions, including the Quad Infrastructure Fellowship Program and pandemic preparedness exercise and the development of a trusted and secure telecommunication network. No signals from Vikram and Pragya Space Agency, the Indian Space Research Organization, which was hoping to awaken the Chandrayaan-3's Vikram lander and Pragya rover on Friday, says it has not received any signal from either of the two despite continuing efforts to establish communications. On September 2, the rover was put into sleep mode. 2 days later, on September 4, the lander was also put to sleep following the end of one lunar day, hoping for their awakening around September 22, 2023. ISRO has said on September 4, Nilesh M. Desai, director of Space Application Center, said that the efforts were on to establish contact with the lander and rover, adding that it could happen anytime. Then, then oil price a concern but no alarm yet. The recent run-up in the global crude oil prices is a concern for Indian economy but does not yet warrant alarm, and price of some food items that had soared inflation above 7% in July are on the retreat, while those of other like tur dal will ease once imports hit the market. The finance ministry said apart from steadily climbing oil prices, the ministry identified the monsoon deficit, which could impact both Kharif and Rabi crops as another risk to the economic outlook, and termed a likely stock market dip in the wake of an overdue global stock market correction as an ever-present risk. The economic outlook remained bright and on the track for the baseline estimate of 6.5% real GDP growth this year. The ministry said in its economic review for August. It stressed that the momentum of economic activity from the first quarter, when the GDP grew 7.8%, has been carried forward into the second quarter, and there are incipient signs of a new private sector formation cycle. The ministry cited high frequency indicators such as record EUA bills and Electronic tool collections as a science of healthy economic activity. It pointed to a 4.2% uptick in the capital goods import in the first quarter to suggest higher public capital spending had begun to crowd in private investment. Private sector is in good health and as data on advance tax payment confirms, the ministry noted, asserting that business were investing. The US 10-year bond yield has crossed 4.3% and the S&P 500 index is not too far from its all-time high. The risk of a stock market correction and geopolitical development could potentially hurt investment sentiments in the second half, but the impact of these developments on underlying economic activity in India should be relatively contained and it averred. While the ministry acknowledged the August monsoon deficit could impact both Kharif and Rabi crops, it termed September's rains heartening as it had erased a part of the overall deficit. Then, as per last article, JP Morgan's decision to lower government's borrowing cost free of liquidity (CEA). JP Morgan's move to include Indian government bond in its global emerging market bond indices could potentially lower the country's sovereign borrowings cost to help finance the current account deficit and free up liquidity for the domestic financiers to deploy in more productive assets. Chief Economic Advisor V. Ananthan Nageswar said on Friday, in a September 21 note, JP Morgan convened India's inclusion into its emerging market bond in indices from June 28 to 2024, starting with a 1% exposure to 23 index eligible bond with a combined national value of $330 billion. The bond's inclusion would be suggested over 10 months till March 2025, when the Indian securities were expected to reach their maximum weight of 10%. It is said benefits of inclusion, everything else being equal, an incremental source of demand should see the government's borrowings cost come down, but the order of magnitude is difficult to determine at this stage. Mr. Nageswaran said, replying to a query from the Hindu. Foreign ownership in the Indian government bonds market reckoned to be the third largest among emerging market at 1.2%, $2 trillion is less than 2%, one of the lowest among its peers. Higher foreign ownership would relieve the Indian financial system from having to be these bonds' biggest buyers and thus be in a position to lend that money for more productive purposes. Mr. Nageswaran observed the move may also trigger some appreciations of the rupee, which could prove a challenge as keeping it competitive is also important and expose bond and currency markets to external turbulence, but on balance the benefits outweigh such concerns, the CEA said. The next जो है इंडिया जी सेक टू attract $30 billion on entry into JPM's indices. The inclusion of Indian government bonds in JP Morgan's bond indices could draw foreign fund inflows in the range of 30 to $40 billion over the next 18 months. Analysis reckon Goldman Sachs economist estimated the inclusion could prompt passive inflows of about $30 billion and at least another $10 billion from other funds. So India could see inflows upward of $40 billion over the next 1.5 years. Their route. So this is all for today, and we will meet from tomorrow onwards. So thank you. Thanks a lot.